Let's start creating our barbecue design first by creating a base for the shadow for our grill. So what I will do is I will bring this guy a bit down till it snaps with our half circle and make it a bit bigger. This should be fine. Now I'll add this bottom part, this bottom shape to the selection and choose divide, because what I have right now is these two elements and this separate shape, which actually will be our main shade. Because if I now just grab this bottom element and make it just lighter, not that dark, you can now start seeing that this actually might look like a shading, and it will definitely look like that once we just grab the rounded rectangle tool and start creating our rounded rectangle. That would be our base, and this should be fine. Of course, we can always maybe just make the roundness of the corners a bit bigger. I guess 30% should be alright. Let me just quickly select all these elements, make sure that they are aligned nicely, and we got our main part of the grill created. So now we can just clone this guy up. So I'm simply holding down the Control key, and let's maybe bring it a bit to the center, and let's change its color to this sizzling red, like this. And let me just borrow this guy one more time, make it smaller. I want to now create a burger, so I'll add this orange fill to this rounded rectangle, clone this guy to the left and this guy to the right. So now we got all the burgers created. So let's now create the steam, but let's not use the pen tool for that. Let's use the Crescent tool, and let's grab it first from our Custom Shapes Tools panel. So what I'll do is I'm going to quickly create a crescent that is going to look more or less like this. I am not holding down the Shift key. I don't want to constrain the proportions. I just want the crescent to look more or less like this. So the next step here would be to just cut the bottom half of our crescent, cut it out. So I'm just going to grab the rectangle tool and create a rectangle that is going to cover the bottom half of the crescent. So now we can add both these shapes to our selection and choose Subtract from the toolbar. So we got the top half of our, first steam. So now let's copy and paste it back in. So I'm just going to press Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V. So now we got two elements. And if we now just flip it vertical and then horizontal, we can now move it down. And of course, let me just zoom real close in so we can see if I am aligning everything nicely. Of course, we could always go to the view mode and choose outline to be even more precise, but I guess it looks more or less fine. More or less is the right word here. Maybe even closer. Let me just bring it a bit to the left. Okay, this should be all right. Let's just zoom back out. So we got our first part of the steam created. And of course, all we have to do right now is we need to just unite them as one shape and make it significantly smaller. So all we have to do is to just clone this guy to the right and this guy to the left, so we can now maybe make these guys just a bit smaller, bring them a bit down, and create a steam that is going to look something like so. Of course, we could play around with the positioning and maybe with the size, but I think that this should be fine. The last thing to do here would be just to change the fill from this orange, dark orange, to something like a very light gray. So once the steam is created, all we would need to do is to create the stand and actually creating the stand will allow us to take a look at creating some a bit more advanced shading effects without touching the clipping abilities of Affinity Designer. Let's grab the pen tool and make sure that we have the stroke active and filled with maybe this gray color. And I'm simply going to create a line that is going to look something like this. This should be all right. Now let's just copy and paste it back in. So I'm pressing Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, and I'm simply going to flip it horizontally and put it somewhere to the side. We are going to fix all the alignment issues in just a second. And of course, the last line would be the middle one. So again, I'm just going to quickly create a line that is going to be a bit shorter and look something like this. If you want to make these stands, these legs a bit well, wider or thicker, all you have to do is to just manipulate the stroke. So we can maybe make it maybe not that thick, but something around 15 points should be all right. Same for this guy. And for this guy. So now, just to make sure that all these distances, all that the alignment is okay, you can select all these legs and go to the alignment options, and in here choose align horizontally and then space horizontally, and then press OK. And now we can group all these elements, add our main half circle to the selection, and now align everything to the center. I mentioned that we are going to create a shading effect that is going to be a bit more advanced than the one we created here, although the technique is going to be pretty much the same. So what we want to achieve right now is we want to have some kind of a visual gap, visual distinction between the legs, these guys right here, and this top half circle, because right now they are kind of like blending together. They look like they're one piece, and that's not what we want. So what I'm going to do is I'm first going to ungroup all these legs. So I'll press Ctrl-Shift+G on my keyboard, and then I'm going to select all of these elements, go to the layer menu, and choose expand stroke, as we don't want these guys to be strokes, we want these guys to be filled paths. So right now, let's move the legs all the way to the back. So this time we could maybe choose one of these elements. So move to back or move back one, but let's move them all the way to the back. And now let's just grab this, this half circle and clone it a bit down. And let's fill it with a black color. And of course, I don't want it to be put against my main design. I want it to be moved a bit back, so they are now just covering these legs right here. And if we now just select this shading piece and all the legs, and just divide all these elements, we can now remove this one, and what we are left basically is these small shading elements down here. So there we go, we basically got this design created, so we can now just group it and even cut it, then go to our main artboard right here, this garden artboard, paste it in, and of course make it significantly smaller, and put it here on the side, and there we go.